Good morning. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the September 13th, 2023 Economic Development and Housing Subcommittee. I'd like to introduce City Attorney Paul Lee. Mr. Lee, please explain the role of the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the subcommittee. During the citizen comment, members of the public may address the subcommittee for up to 3 minutes on issues of interest or concern to them. The Arizona Open Meeting Law permits the subcommittee members to listen to the comments, but prohibits members from discussing or acting on the matter presented. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I would like to introduce our interpreter, Carmen Cota, who will provide a brief announcement.
Good morning, chair members. My name is Carmen Cota, and I'll be providing interpretation services for our Spanish-speaking audience. Please give me a moment to introduce myself to them. Buenos días, soy Carmen Cota. Yo les voy a servir de intérprete esta mañana. Si me van a utilizar, por favor, hablen en citas cortas, pausen, hablen con claridad para darme la oportunidad de interpretar de la forma más eficaz. Gracias. Thank you, chair members.
Thank you, Carmen. Okay, we'll start this subcommittee meeting with a call to the public, and I do not believe we have any speakers. Has that changed at all? No speakers?
That is correct, Mr. Chair.
We'll move on to the approval of minutes. Item number 1 is approval of the CCI minutes from June 7th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, item number 2 is approval of the EDE minutes from June 28th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next, we move on to item number 3. It's on our consent agenda. Do I have a motion for item number 3?
I will move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, I apologize. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. Okay, items 4, 5, and 6 are all for information only. First of all, do any of my colleagues have any questions for staff? Hearing none, we'll move to item number 7. Item 7 is for information and discussion, and at this point, I'll turn it over to Deputy City Manager John Chan to introduce staff.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee. With us for item 7, which is an update on the Human Services Campus engagement efforts, are Deputy City Manager Gina Montes, Office of Homeless Solutions Director Rachel Milne, and Deputy Director Scott Hall.
Good morning. Chairman Robinson, members of the subcommittee. We're here to provide a progress update to you this morning on the city's efforts to address the encampment near the Human Services Campus. It's commonly referred to as the zone. As you know, the city is under a court injunction to close the area to camping. We're in the process of working with many community partners to provide shelter beds to individuals in the area. OHS staff and several community partners are providing services to those camping, cleaning and closing one section at a time. At the same time, OHS has been working diligently, directly and indirectly with nonprofit providers to open additional shelters as quickly as possible to address the increasing problem of homelessness in Phoenix. The team has made significant progress in assisting unsheltered people in the area in ending their homelessness, and also in addressing the impacts on property owners, businesses, and residents in the area. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Rachel Milne, Director of the Office of Homeless Solutions, and Scott Hall, Deputy Director, to review the process and the progress in detail.
Good morning, Chairman Robinson and members of the subcommittee. We're pleased to be here today to provide you with an update on the Office of Homeless Solutions' efforts to engage with individuals unsheltered around the Human Services campus. When we refer to the area around the Human Services campus, we are referring to the area bounded by 7th Avenue to the east, 15th Avenue on the west, Jefferson Street on the north, and the railroad tracks or Harrison Street on the south. The Human Services campus staff conducts weekly approximate counts of the numbers of people in the area. Their outreach teams canvass the area and count the number of people they observe, or use their knowledge of the area to estimate the number of people living unsheltered. This count includes tents, vehicles, and people without any apparent shelter. According to the Human Services campus weekly counts in the area, the number of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness has fluctuated greatly over the last few years, with a high of around 1,000 individuals in the area. Last week's count, the Human Services campus staff counted 441 people in the immediate area around the campus. The Office of Homeless Solutions is committed to offering the individuals in this area with safe indoor places where they can begin the process of ending their homelessness. In May of 2023, the City of Phoenix began its block-by-block approach to close the streets to camping around the campus. Office of Homeless Solutions staff begins the engagement process on each block at least 2 weeks in advance of the engagement day by providing written and verbal notice that the street will be closed to camping. The team uses this time to get to know each individual in the area and assess their potential needs. We are often able to find appropriate placement for individuals in advance of our engagement day efforts. On the day of the engagement efforts, the street is closed to vehicular and pedestrian traffic via a street closure permit. The staff from the city's Office of Homeless Solutions, the Human Services campus, and Community Bridges are available to help people pack their belongings and transport individuals who have accepted shelter placement or other services. Staff are also able to store property for both people who are headed into an indoor location and choose or are not able to take all of their belongings, or property found on the engagement day efforts where we cannot identify ownership. The city is committed to and has been able to offer indoor shelter options to everyone on the designated blocks as we systematically close them to camping. We usually schedule the engagement efforts 2 to 3 weeks apart in order to ensure we have a variety of shelter options available on the day of the efforts, so that people affected by the closures have diverse options that can meet their individual needs. The Office of Homeless Solutions is far from alone in this undertaking. I mentioned that we have contracts with the Human Services campus and Community Bridges to assist in these engagement efforts, but there are many other organizations that we rely on to make these efforts successful. UMOM, Native American Connections, CAS, and St. Vincent de Paul have been particularly instrumental in ensuring we have a variety of diverse shelter options available on the day of our engagement efforts. There are several other homeless service providers who have come out to engagement day efforts or consistently reached out to offer their assistance as well. Many city departments are involved in these efforts as well. The Streets Department is present at each effort, providing their services to ensure that after our engagement effort ends, the street is cleared of debris and open to the public. We often hear and see misinformation being spread about these efforts, and would like to take a few moments to clarify some of the most prevalent misconceptions about the engagement efforts. First, we have heard that the people we are engaging are only able to access shelter for one day, the day of our efforts. This is incorrect. If an individual accepts shelter, they become a client of that shelter and have access to that shelter bed for as long as they need it and are participating in the program. We do not move people out of the area around the Human Services campus for a one-night stay in shelter. Similarly, we have heard and read that shelter stays are limited to 30 days. This is also incorrect. It is not reasonable to believe that an individual would be able to resolve their homelessness within 30 days of moving to a shelter bed from the area around the campus. The shelters that the City of Phoenix funds do not have arbitrary limits to the length of stay in shelter. There's also a misconception that we are offering hotel rooms to every individual camping around the Human Services campus. This is incorrect. We have a variety of shelter partners that we work with on these days, and we coordinate to offer a diverse array of options for people. The vast majority of people go to congregate shelter settings with appropriate support services. And finally, we often hear that the city's efforts around the campus have displaced people all over Maricopa County. While we know some people around the campus have voluntarily decided to leave once they learned that the city would be closing the streets to camping, these efforts are not responsible for the known increase in unsheltered homelessness our region is experiencing, and we do not have any data to show that the increase in unsheltered homelessness around the community is contributed to the city's efforts around the Human Services campus. We have completed 8 engagement efforts to date. We have worked with a total of 259 individuals on those 8 engagement days. 206 of those individuals have accepted indoor placement. This is typically shelter, but could also be treatment or even occasionally placement directly into housing. 53 people thus far have declined services on those engagement days. We know that the vast majority of these people have voluntarily moved to other blocks around the campus that are not closed to camping. Our Streets Department has provided us data related to their time and effort on these 8 engagement days. They've contributed 291 hours of service and have removed 67.5 tons of debris from the neighborhood. This slide depicts the designated area for our efforts around the campus. Blocks in green have been closed to camping, and the blocks in red still have people experiencing homelessness camping on them. As we continue to move through the area, we are working with blocks that are more densely populated and with people who have higher acuity levels. We will not change our approach as we continue these efforts. We will continue to offer indoor shelter and work closely with people to meet their needs. However, we are cautious in our approach and may need additional time and resources to accomplish our goals. This slide depicts the data from the 8 engagement efforts we've completed thus far, beginning with our first effort on May 10th and our most recent effort on September 1st. Again, we have engaged 259 individuals on these engagement days, and happy and encouraged to say that 80% have accepted a voluntary indoor safer place to be. These individuals were transported immediately on the day of our efforts by the Office of Homeless Solutions, CBI, or Human Services campus staff. They were able to bring their belongings with them to their indoor shelter. If they needed storage for additional belongings, that was available to them as well. People with pets were offered pet-friendly placement, and we also strive to make accommodations for couples to help them stay together as well. Wanted to introduce you to a few of the people we've helped in the engagement efforts so far. So the Office of Homeless Solutions team met Charles recently prior to one of our engagement efforts around the campus. Charles is a veteran who lost his job during the pandemic, which led him to experience homelessness. He was living in his inoperable vehicle and was apprehensive about engaging in services because he thought he'd have to give up that vehicle. Our Office of Homeless Solutions liaison, Caroline Fawn, pictured here, began to engage with Charles daily over a 2-week period, building rapport and addressing his individual needs. On the day of the engagement day, the OH team was able to help Charles with his car's battery, got him into a shelter that met his needs. As a veteran, he's able to access veteran-specific housing options, so our homeless liaisons referred Charles to a housing program that will ensure he gets a housing plan that is individualized to his needs. Charles is on the path to ending his homelessness. The OHS team also met a couple at a recent engagement effort, Carla and Leonard. Leonard is pictured here again with Caroline Fawn from our homeless liaison team. The couple reported having been unsheltered for over a year around the Human Services campus. They are both in their 60s and lost their housing due to a rent increase. Our Office of Homeless Solutions liaisons began to engage with Carla and Leonard daily over a 2-week period, building rapport and assessing their needs. Our liaisons were able to find a shelter placement that would allow the couple to stay together. I'm pleased to say that Carla and Leonard have also found an apartment, which they are set to move into in a few months. And our liaisons worked with the Human Services campus to secure flexible funding for Carla and Leonard to furnish their apartments once they move in. Carla and Leonard are on the path to ending their homelessness. We've spoken today about the many things we've accomplished around the campus. We acknowledge that we have a long way to go. We are not celebrating because as long as we have people sleeping outside who do not wish to, we have work to do. We have learned in the 5 months since we began these efforts that we are making an impact, and we think that impact is overwhelmingly positive. We have learned that we need to maintain a dignified and compassionate approach. We must be able to offer each individual an alternative to being outdoors. It simply isn't safe to sleep outdoors in the Phoenix heat. We have learned that we can do this work largely within the homeless service system, not relying on the city's police department unless it is necessary to address criminal behavior. We are learning that the data is key, but it is also a challenge as people are mobile and they are on the move in this area. We are doing our best to maintain relationships and data on the people we are engaging so that we can eventually look at the aggregate data on all the people we've worked with over this time period. And finally, we've learned that we cannot do this alone. The City of Phoenix does not have the capacity to address this monumental issue on our own. We are reliant on partners that bring a variety of services and expertise to this endeavor. We are extremely grateful for groups that give their time and resources to help us ensure that the people experiencing unsheltered homelessness around the campus are treated with respect and dignity as they are asked to relocate. Moving forward, we have roughly 8 or 9 engagement efforts in front of us. The next one is a week from today, September 20th, on Madison Avenue between 10th and 11th Avenues. Eventually, all blocks between 7th Avenue and 15th Avenue, Jefferson, south to the railroad tracks, will be closed to camping. We are going to work with Maricopa Association of Governments to aggregate data on all of the people we've engaged during this time to know where people are now. We'll look at both our positive and negative outcomes. We will look at how many people have ended their homelessness, how many people are still in shelter working on ending their homelessness, and of course, we will look at how many people weren't successful this time in shelter and have unfortunately returned to homelessness. The next few slides provide you with a before and after look on some of the areas around the campus that we have closed to camping thus far. This is Madison Avenue between 8th and 9th, I think looking north from Madison Avenue. And this next one is Madison between 9th and 10th. Here we have the corner of 10th Avenue and Jefferson. Oh, sorry, that is not the corner of 10th Avenue and Jefferson. That is 13th Avenue between Jefferson and Madison. And there's the corner of Jefferson and 10th Avenue. Chairman Robinson and subcommittee members, this concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for your time and support of the Office of Homeless Solutions and our efforts around the Human Services campus.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'd like to open the floor for additional questions. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you all so much. It's so great to see this presentation in this form, and just, I've been working closely with you and have been so proud of the work that you've done. I think it's incredible, and just seeing the data broken down so clearly where we can visibly see the success is fantastic, and I hope that this presentation can be spread far and wide because it really is a testament to all of the work that you've put in. But just a couple of questions. So you mentioned 259 total engaged, and again, 206 accepted services. So that is a number that I just want to make sure we repeat over and over and over again, that 80% success rate. You talked about the common misconceptions. I think that's another misconception, is information around the data. Every time I, at a community meeting or one-on-one in a conversation with a resident around homelessness, tell them about that, they are shocked in the best way possible when they hear that 80% of individuals do accept services. So just want to make sure we keep communicating that effectively. One question I had about that, though, is whether or not we have data on how many people continue in those services. And I know we've talked about this before, but and if we don't right now, do we have a plan in place to start tracking success over the long term so we can better understand what's working and what's not, and then again, communicate those successes?
Chairman Robinson, Vice Mayor Ansari, members of the subcommittee. So we do not own that data necessarily. So we are working with Maricopa Association of Governments of doing sort of a halfway point check of everyone we've engaged thus far to see where they are now. And then we plan on doing it at the end of the engagement and then looking at things 3, 6, 9 months after as well. So we're working. Sure. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of how the HMIS system works. So when we're engaging with individuals around the campus, we, the City of Phoenix, Scott's team has an HMIS project for that outreach and engagement effort. But when individuals do accept shelter and go to another location, they're closed out of our HMIS project and they're open in that shelter project. So they have a right to their privacy in that data. So what we need to do is get with Maricopa Association of Governments to request aggregate data. So not every individual's data who we've worked with on that team, but more aggregate data of the say 259 individuals right now that we've worked with to see where they are now. So that is definitely in the works and something that we're working with our counterparts at MAG to accomplish and get you that as well.
So in that case, do you think it would be reasonable for us to ask you, let's say in 3 months, you said 369, in 3 months, could you come back with the first, like an update to this presentation to the subcommittees telling us where we are after 3 months?
Chairman Robinson, Vice Mayor Ansari, members of the subcommittee, I think that's totally reasonable, yes.
Okay, great. That's something that I would definitely like to see. Then kind of going back to this point around common misconceptions and the data and how successful it's all been, I'm wondering when it comes to communications, can you tell me more about your media strategy? I know we've talked a lot about this, but again, I just think that the story, the Phoenix story, should be out there more so on what we're doing and the successes that we're seeing. So for example, I think the people we've helped section is very compelling, right? Like people love to see just individual examples. And there was this one video that I believe St. Vincent de Paul posted of an individual who went to one of those Steel and Spark shipping container shelters and how happy he was. Do we have a plan in place to begin sharing some of those stories with the public, whether that comes with them interviewing with local press or us through social media channels, allowing those individuals who are receiving services from our programming to tell their story so that hopefully it will inspire others?
Chairman Robinson, Vice Mayor Ansari, and members of the subcommittee, yes, we have been pretty, I think, reactive is the best word. We've gotten a lot of media attention on the 8 engagement efforts so far, so we've done a lot of interviews and seen a lot of media on those efforts, but we haven't proactively sort of talked about what we're doing as we sort of did today. We did start that effort at our last engagement effort, September 1st. We put out some social media on that very successful day, and there is a plan in place to move forward with our communications department to really try and get the word out from our voice specifically on what we're doing and those highlights. We need to tell our story and not sort of let the media drive it, certainly. And then a component of that media strategy with the communications department is to highlight some individuals who have been assisted and who want to tell their story and who want to sort of talk about what their road has been, either at the Human Services campus or now in shelter.
And Chairman Robinson, Vice Mayor, if I could also add to that, we are working closely with our communications department, as they're the experts in helping to assist us with some of the parts of that. The one thing I would add is that we have made a concerted effort to make our staff available to interviews in the last several months, more so than we ever had. Simply because the people doing the interviews with the knowledge are also the ones doing the work, and so want to make sure they're able to do their work while also responding to all of those requests. But I want to acknowledge Rachel and Scott both, but particularly Rachel for really stepping up in the last several months. She's been on TV, radio, done interviews with national media, and I think has done an outstanding job. And I think that's one of the ways that we've made an effort within the Office of Homeless Solutions to try to get more of that word out, as doing many more interviews than we had in the past, from at least the time when I joined the city 2.5 years ago. So.
That's great, and it's very noticed. I mean, I've seen you, and I know there was, a few times where you've done so many interviews in one day, and it's really appreciated. But I also appreciate you acknowledging, I think, that we have been a little reactive. It's one thing for press to reach out to us to ask for a comment and our take on something, and it's another for us to be proactive in putting out, press releases every 2 weeks to say, hey, here's what our results were at the last engagement. Here's a 2 examples of a compelling, story of someone's like real life example of how they were helped. I think if we could do a little bit more of that, I think it would go a long way. And then, coming up with more creative communications around storytelling of these success stories would be great. And hopefully, once we have the data on longevity of results and where folks are at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, that will also be a positive story to tell. So I appreciate that. I just want to keep pushing on that because I think just it all comes down to what the public, when I go out into the community and people are unaware of these things, I also think that tells us that we do need to do a better job communicating that, and maybe that's a result of potentially being more proactive. And then my final question, you mentioned that there are approximately 9 engagement efforts remaining. I just wanted to get a little bit better understanding of our availability of indoor spaces and, how we're planning to make sure there's indoor spaces for those 9 remaining engagements.
Chairman Robinson, Vice Mayor Ansari, I'll start this answer and then maybe kick it over to Scott to follow up. But our purpose in sort of separating them by 2 to 3 weeks is to work with our shelter community to find available spaces. We are really counting on that churn of people exiting shelter space, either to housing or to other resources for these efforts. So that's really why we take so much time in between, is to make sure we have that capacity going into an engagement effort. Scott, do you want to add anything?
No, that was a pretty good assessment. Our staff works diligently with all of our shelter providers to make sure. That's why some of the dates you saw in there, you saw some that were 3 weeks apart, you saw some that were 1 week apart. It was all based on availability. So immediately after each engagement, we do a debrief, and then that next week is spent on resource gathering to make sure we can achieve those outcomes. So that's why the fluctuation. That's why we don't give hard dates for each street, because we want to keep it fluid like that to make sure we can achieve our goal of offering indoor space and the dignity and respect of working with the individuals out there.
Fantastic. And I think just my final comment, I again want to thank you all so much. The work that you're doing is fantastic. When we even look at just these 2 stories, one individual says he lost his job during the pandemic, the other to an increase in rent. I think that just want to make the point that, the work that we're doing is phenomenal and critical, but it's also not addressing the root causes of the problem. And so if we really do want to address homelessness in the long term, we have to make sure we're dealing with affordability issues in the city of Phoenix, increasing our housing stock, prioritizing that. I think last week's vote on legalizing ADUs is a great first step, but a lot more that we need to do, and also pushing every industry to pay livable wages. And the data right now shows you need to make $25 an hour in Phoenix to be able to survive. And we know that there's many folks working at airports, hotels, construction, so many other areas that aren't making that much. So just want to thank you, but also acknowledge that there is no way that you will be able to solve the continuation of this problem if we don't address those other root causes. Thank you.
Councilwoman Hodge-Washington.
Thank you so much, Chair. Again, thank you, Gina. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Scott. I know it's a heavy lift that you're doing, and I want to say personally thank you for all that you guys do. Councilwoman Ansari took quite a bit of my questions and comments, but I wanted to follow up on a couple of things. First thing, the common misconceptions. I want to make sure I understand where do we find that? Is it primarily within the unsheltered population, or do we find that in the community as a whole?
Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman Washington, members of the subcommittee, where are we hearing those misconceptions? We see them in the media. We hear them from individuals. We hear them even from some of our service partners that we work with. So they are prevalent kind of across the board.
Thank you for that clarification, because my next question follows. What is our plan to help dispel some of these misconceptions? I mean, I think a media outreach is important, but I don't know if it's possible that we, as part of the information, if we're hearing, let me say this, if we're hearing the concerns with the unsheltered population that we're going to be addressing, do we need to include that as part of our notices when we're saying we're going to move and here's what you can expect? Do we need to make sure our partners are adequately trained? Do we need to I'm trying to figure out what is our plan to help dispel some of these misconceptions?
If I could, I know Rachel will want to add to this, but one of the things that we're doing proactively is many presentations out in the community to service providers, and Rachel and Scott and myself even have been to different neighborhood groups and different constituencies to give this information. So we're doing it somewhat directly, and it's going to be hard for us to touch everybody, but that is one way that we do it. And when we are out in the community and we hear these concerns, we address them as best as we can. One of the things that I neglected to mention is that Communications has also worked to put several newsroom stories on our website so that there is a place, and we point people to those stories. We point the media and we point the public when we can to some of those. That is where we are putting out some of this information. Now, whether or not it gets picked up and how well it gets picked up is something else. I think some of the ideas that you posed in terms of training the providers and others, I know we'll take some of those into consideration and see what more we can do as we're continuing this process to get the word out more effectively than we are right now. And then, Rachel, I don't know if you want to add.
Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman Hodge-Washington, yes, I wrote down some of your ideas, but one of the things I think that we really focus on, and we have been, but can do an even better job on, is our liaisons who are out there working with individuals in that 2-week period prior to make sure they understand some of the misconceptions that I went over today. It's not just a one-day shelter stay. It's not just a 30-day shelter stay. No, you're probably not going to be offered a hotel room, but sort of a reality check for individuals there. And then certainly the partners we work closest with on these endeavors, they know what we're up to. We meet with them prior to each one of our engagement efforts, but it's sort of our periphery homeless service providers that we do need to do a better job of, and I appreciate Deputy City Manager Montez's ideas of making sure we're proactively doing newsroom stories and that type of thing, and also meeting with them to make sure they understand exactly what we're up to.
And I don't want a Monday morning quarterback, but looking at the PowerPoint as presented with the common misconceptions, I think a great revision might be to say this is a misconception, but here's the truth. So that it's very clear it's something that we can cite to and show if someone is just perusing through this information. So the other thing I wanted to talk about or ask a few questions were regarding it's also under the common misconception comments, and it was efforts have displaced people to other parts of the county or our city. I know that's a complaint that I hear a lot of as I'm out in the community. And I want to make sure, I heard your response was that we have no data to show that they're actually moving throughout the community. I would love to encourage us to get more affirmative data that shows your answer was many of them are moving within the zone, so they're staying in that locale. And I would just propose that if maybe we could keep track of how many individuals we are interacting with when we first give the notice compared to how many people are actually being moved. We interact on the actual day of the enhancement.
Yeah, Chair. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman Hodge-Washington, I'll start and then shoot it over to Scott. So just to clarify what I mentioned, our efforts around the campus are not responsible for the increase in unsheltered homelessness that the entire region is seeing. Certainly, we have seen more people experiencing unsheltered homelessness as we look out from the campus. Certainly, the campus does count now. They've expanded the area where they count. But I just wanted to clarify, I'm not saying there is a known increase in unsheltered homelessness throughout the county, but it's not directly related to what we're doing at the campus.
No, and I want to make sure I'm clear on that. I was not insinuating that we were not accurate. I just wanted to make sure we have some level of data that we can cite to saying we interacted, for example, we provided notices to 25 individuals 2 weeks leading up to the notification, the enhancement, and on the date of the enhancement, we engaged with 20 individuals, and we have information that those 5 individuals that we moved to this segment of the location. I think we just need the data to be able to help our community understand that no, this process is not increasing what you're seeing in your neighborhood. What you're seeing in your neighborhood is simply the effect of our current reality where it comes to the housing inventory and the pricing that we are seeing. So we want to make sure that we're I want to be able to have information that I can give to my community to say, no, we are making sure that doesn't affect you. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Chairman Robinson, Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman Hodge-Washington, yeah, our data is pretty sophisticated. So when we do start and drop our notice at 2 weeks, we immediately, when we engage with them, start entering that into our project, the data on the individuals, which also comes with latitude, longitude of where those individuals are. So we have heat maps for outreach of where individuals are at. So when we engage someone through other parts of the city or even other parts of the county, we can see where they were last engaged at. So we do track that data. So we can definitively say that who we engage with down around the campus, if we do engage them in any other part of the city, that data would be in there. So we do have that level of sophistication within there.
Perfect.
And if I could just add to that, because what they're not saying is that for what you're asking for, Councilman Hodge-Washington, they know how many were there when they first started. They know how many were there the day that we assist people, and they know on that day whether or not they moved into the area. Now, if they left in between the first and last day, they may not know exactly, but they do know the day of how many didn't accept services and if they moved within the actual immediate area. So they do actually have that information.
And that's great that you guys have the information. I think what I'm trying to say is to make sure we have information that we can share with our community a little bit more. It's not represented on this chart or the public information, so people, their perception become their reality. And I think sometimes we need to help them create that, understand what the reality is with actual data. And I'm just going off of, generally we don't see how many individuals are, I have to remember the information that I see as a council person versus the information that is out in the public. And I want to make sure that we are making sure the information is in the public that adequately shows what how we are able to make those statements. I have a few more, I'm almost there. I want to also say thank you so much for sharing the success stories, because I had the opportunity to witness the first enhancement up close and personal, and it definitely tremendously shifted my perspective of the issue of the individuals that we're encountering. And I think the more we do those, it's helpful not just to humanize these individuals, but it gives our community the necessary empathy to be patient with the city as we work to address those issues. So. It's always great to put a face to these efforts, so thank you. I mean, I still remember the individuals that I personally talked to that day. And my last question is, we recognize the situation is not limited to the zone. I know we were under a court order, so that has been our area of priority. If I look at the calendar and how many more enhancements we think we have in place, it looks like we will probably be approaching close to the end of the year or beginning of 2024 when we anticipate having the area cleaned. I have two questions. One, I know we have the information provided is that many of those individuals that have refused services have simply moved to another portion of the camp outside the campus area, and I want to make sure that we have a plan or understanding of what that plan will look like when we get to those more resistant individuals. And then two, what is our plan? Because in my district, I can only speak for it, we get a lot of calls about encampments in those areas. Is there a plan to continue this process outside of the zone? And if we're still thinking about it, I just want to make sure I know I'm aware of that.
Thank you, Chairman Robinson, Councilman Hodge-Washington. One of the strategies, one of the tools, interim tools we are requesting during this process, and we're in the process of getting approval for, is our structured campground safe outdoor space for those that are truly not willing to accept services, not ready to go indoors. And Rachel or Scott can talk a little bit more about that dynamic. And so that is a tool that we are looking towards so that we can not disperse folks in the immediate area, especially, or in other places. And so that is one part of the plan. In terms of how we're addressing encampments citywide and around the area, we have been doing at the same time addressing encampments throughout the city and in the area. And so we have a process through our Phoenix Cares through the Phoenix Cares process where we engage, we determine what property those encampments may sit on. Is it public property? Is it private property? And then we proceed to offer services and address those encampments as they're entered into the system. We do have hundreds of them at any one point in time. And so our liaisons in conjunction with other departments do address those encampments. Again, it's probably not as quickly as we would like, and we do encounter the same limitations in shelter space. But given that, we do continue to address those encampments throughout the city. I'm not sure if I got all those questions, but let me hand it over to Rachel to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman Hodge Washington, yes, I think Deputy City Manager hit the nail on the head. So we know moving into these next 8 or 9 blocks, we are going to encounter folks that we have already encountered in the previous 8 or 9 blocks, and we also are going to encounter folks that might not be ready to enter into a sheltered situation. So we are going in eyes wide open that you know, it's been a tough 5 months thus far, but we're prepared for an even tougher next five months moving forward. We are going to be working with folks that have higher acuity levels. We are anticipating having more people not be ready perhaps for an indoor location, which is really why that safe outdoor space is going to be essential to get that up and going while we still have people unsheltered in the area, to make sure that they don't move outside of this area as we shut all of those blocks down to camping, and that they don't create another encampment elsewhere outside of the community. So I think that's what I wanted to add. Scott, I don't know if you have anything else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councilwoman Stark?
Thank you. And actually, the councilwoman took away one of my comments. I do hear from constituents the fear that because we're in the zone, people are moving to other parts of the city. And I don't think that's true. I think you're correct that we've seen an uptick in the number of people experiencing homeless. And I will tell you, a couple years ago at the St. Vincent de Paul dining hall on Hatcher, actually, it was a survey done, and what was fascinating, talking to some of the people that are out on the streets, they said, you know, I don't have a home, but Sunny Slope's my home. So I do think people identify with different parts of the city, and so I'm glad that you're trying to clear up that misconception. I think it's important that people understand that there is an increase, and we've really got to address the issues as to why we're seeing that uptick. And so with that, I know in our future agenda items, it looks like we're going to have an update on other shelters that are being constructed within the city, but could you give us just a quick update? I know there's a couple shelters, 1 and 5, 1 and 3, that are under construction, but I think, you know, holistically we need to look at what we're doing in the entire city, but thank you for clearing that up.
Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman Stark, and members of the subcommittee. So yes, we have 780 shelter beds currently in various stages of construction throughout the city of Phoenix. And that's just the city of Phoenix funded shelters. There are other communities doing all kinds of things. There are other private nonprofits that are working without city assistance. But those 780 beds are spread throughout the city. You mentioned the one in District 3 is the North Mountain Healing Center, which is set to open in mid-2024. That's Community Bridges opening that site. The one in District 5 is our Cass Haven project, which is a 170-bed shelter targeting folks age 55 and older. We've got one in District 8, St. Vincent de Paul, who's building Ozanam Manor 2, a 100-bed shelter on their campus. And then our other, we've got 2 really amazing family shelter projects, one at UMOM and one at Salvation Army, to add family shelter units to our community. And then finally, of course, we are still working on our city shelter as well, which we anticipate having both congregate and non-congregate shelter as well, finding an alternative site for that city planned shelter. So 780 beds spread throughout the city in various stages of development, not including everything that Maricopa County, other cities, and other private groups are opening as well.
Thank you. And to that end, and maybe in the future, we could have a presentation on some of the other activities that are happening within our city that are trying to address some of the cause issues. For example, New Freedom, which is at Peoria and I-17. They actually work with people coming out of prison and trying to help them find jobs. So I think there's a lot of programs out there that people don't realize that we're really involved in. We may not be doing the program, but we certainly think there's a lot of good things happening, and so perhaps in the future we could kind of have a more holistic discussion of some of the things that are out there. There's, as you said, a lot of private shelters. There's one up at 19th and Bell, and it's a specialized shelter. I think people need to know that we really are trying, and we do try to work with the nonprofits. I think we forget that the nonprofits really are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So I think maybe in the future it might be nice to have that bigger discussion to see what's happening throughout the city.
And if I could just really quickly relay Chairman Robinson, Councilwoman Stark, that you're absolutely correct, and that was in our plans when we bring forth another item in the future to talk about many of those services that support people experiencing homelessness in some of those private shelters, additional ones in Sunny Slopes, some transitional housing. U.S. Vets is another one in District 1 that is completing construction. It's almost there, that we'll be able to hopefully have a grand opening here in a few months. And so, some of the substance use treatment centers and detox, and some of those that are in other places throughout the city, and would love to highlight some of what the other cities are doing as well. And we would like to see more, but we're pleased that it's more than it ever has been from what I've seen, and so we'll look forward to presenting that information.
And I'll make one final comment. Rachel, you said that it's been a tough 5 months, but there's no doubt in my mind, and I think it's a clear reflection on all of you, the entire group that's working on it. You guys are tough enough to deal with it, and you've been doing a great job. So, and I know that gets missed sometimes. I know that you hear all the negatives, and not necessarily from anybody at this group, but I know you hear the negatives about all the work that you're doing. But there are successes. We're appreciative of them, and we thank you very much for the presentation. So thank you. Next, we move to item number 8 for discussion and possible action. Deputy City Manager John Chan, please introduce staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the subcommittee. Item 8 is an update on the city's Economic Development Department's fiscal year bioscience healthcare strategic initiative. With us at the table is Community and Economic Development Director Chris Mackey and Economic Development Program Manager Claudia Whitehead. Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chan. Good morning, Chairman and members of the subcommittee. We're excited to be here with you today to bring forward our 23-24 Biosciences Strategic Initiative. We are in our 5th year of this initiative and are seeing tremendous results that you'll see throughout Ms. Whitehead's presentation today. We look at biosciences and healthcare are one of the 6 major sector focuses that we have in community and economic development for the city of Phoenix. The others are advanced manufacturing, advanced business services, and what I mean by that would be finance, insurance, big data, more office-type jobs. We have aerospace and defense. We have emerging technologies, IT software, and then a subsector on international and foreign direct investment on top of biosciences and healthcare. So we, as I mentioned, we are seeing tremendous success in our biosciences and healthcare strategic initiative. With me here today is Claudia Whitehead, Program Manager over our biosciences and healthcare strategic initiatives, or as we call her, our guru of bio. And I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Whitehead to present our recommendations for fiscal year 23-24. Claudia?
Thank you, Chris, and I've never been called a guru. Thank you. Love it. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee. We're really excited to share an update on what's happening in the biosciences and healthcare in the city of Phoenix, and thanks to all of your support in making this successful. Phoenix's Bioscience Healthcare Strategic Initiative fully launched in 2019. with a focus on these areas to gain a deep understanding of Phoenix's strengths to support and promote the growth of the industry. The first one is research and development. We have a number of institutes of research excellence in the public and private sector in the city of Phoenix, in our research hospitals, academic institutions, and federal agencies. We also have a focus on the entrepreneurs, those innovators and founders who are advancing bioresearch and development through their companies. We also have this wonderful strength in precision medicine, those that are focused on advancing genomic and molecular advanced technologies to personalize drug development that lead to personalized treatments. Our healthcare delivery, we are very fortunate to have a number of top-ranked hospitals here in Phoenix, and those that provide clinical delivery of life-saving treatments along with the clinical resources for conducting clinical trials. On our education side, we have wonderful universities, community colleges that advance the science, medical, and research education at all levels, from K-12 to the community college to university, and also focused trainings. Developing that talent pipeline that all of the employers are looking for. And finally, looking at our branding. So we've leveraged the knowledge of these assets to support the growth of the existing companies, along with the attraction of new companies to Phoenix and the talent to grow our dynamic ecosystem within the bio industry. Building off the success of the Phoenix's Hot brand, we have also named it as Phoenix's Bio. So you can actually go to phoenixesbio.com and see the breadth and wonderful assets that we have within the city of Phoenix, along with the great news and videos that have been developed to share that story.
And Chairman, I'd like to call attention, particularly on the education side. When you look back at 2004, we had one medical school in Phoenix. It was University of Arizona's medical school. It had just received its accreditation. It was working towards its accreditation in Phoenix. Fast forward to 2023, we have 6 medical schools in Phoenix. So in less than 20 years, the efforts of our biosciences activities, really that precision focus, that strategic focus that went back to the City Council's decision in 2004 to bring the Translational Genomics Institute to Phoenix and create the Phoenix Bioscience Corps, has just sent Phoenix in an incredible trajectory where now we have 6 medical schools here in Phoenix. Thanks, Claudia.
And as a result of these efforts, many, if you looked back to 2004 especially, nobody had Phoenix on their radar for biosciences and looking at that industry. But fast forward to today, we are now nationally ranked. We are now in the top 5 in the US of emerging life science markets. We have also just been ranked in #1 in job growth among the emerging life science markets, so in the bio jobs. The life science job growth rate has just been on outpacing the national rankings, and we've been ranked #1 in life science graduate growth rate. So that's in the biological and biomedical science degrees among emerging life science markets, and it's more than 90%. And as I had alluded to earlier, really talent is really the #1 decider for companies as they look to choose to expand and relocate to Phoenix. And so we have this great talent pipeline that is being developed here. And so we can keep these graduates here because of the growing life science market that we have, the industry that's expanding. So we're really excited to be able to tell that story as we talk to companies about why they should choose Phoenix. And we have heard from a number of companies. There was a long time where many companies had a hard time to attract that top talent at the management level for our companies in the biosciences, and they now are attracting talent from the Bostons, the San Franciscos, and others to lead their companies here in Phoenix.
And just to really put a finer point on how incredible this is that Phoenix is sitting here in 2023 with these rankings. In 2001, the Flynn Foundation created the Biosciences Roadmap for the first time. The state was involved, the county was involved, the cities were involved. Claudia and I were involved. I hate to date myself, but we were involved in the creation of the Biosciences Roadmap. And at that time, we would do the bio trade show back then, which you'll hear more about in just a moment. And we would go to these trade shows, and the larger cities, San Francisco and Atlanta and San Diego and New York and Chicago, they'd pat us on our heads and say, aren't you all just cute, but you're a little late to the party of biosciences. And we've got this sewn up, so don't even waste your time. And in the true fashion of Phoenix, of go big or go home, we didn't take that for an answer. We kept going, and we kept pushing, and we kept driving along with our city councils and our legislators and our planners and our streets teams and our water departments and our thought leaders and our businesses and our hospitals. And you face today and you look where Phoenix is. This is on a national level where 20 years ago we were, aren't you just cute? And now we are a recognized leader. So it is huge for all of us across Arizona in the biosciences sector that we have reached this level today.
And along those lines, so we have had experienced unprecedented growth and investment in biomedical and healthcare facilities since 2019. We have had more than $4 billion in new capital investment in more than 6 million square feet of new primary facilities. So we're not counting medical offices, doctors' offices, those type of things. These are really primary facilities. And creating more than 10,000 new direct jobs. And when you look at the biosciences, one of the reasons that we really focus on this industry is because of the quality of jobs that those create. And nationally, the salaries for bioscience jobs are 85% higher than in the private sector. And so these are great quality jobs for our residents that we're creating for the city. And one of the cornerstones of our Bioscience Healthcare Strategic Initiative is attending the Bio International Trade Show. And we attended this past June. And just to share with you, give you an overview of who attends the Bio International Trade Show, is this year there were almost 21,000 attendees at the conference, at the trade show, and with 42% of those attendees being international. This is a truly global gathering. It's the largest global gathering of bioindustry leaders on an annual basis. 73 countries were represented. There were 49 domestic and international pavilions, and that includes the city of Phoenix. We were one of the pavilions, where usually it's a country or a state that has a pavilion, but like Chris said, we go big or go home, so we go big, and we have our pavilion at the trade show. And additionally, there are more than 1,500 other exhibitors at the trade show. And for us, Phoenix at Bio, by the numbers, our activities included, we had 42 delegates that had attended with us from 28 organizations. We held in congregate more than 400 meetings, one-on-one meetings with companies. We identified 140 opportunities for collaboration, partnership, leads, and investors. And we had 26, I apologize. My thing was blocking it up. So we had 26 hot prospects that we're working with right now, and 70% of those are on in international companies. So it's really exciting to see this international focus and interest in the city of Phoenix as well. We also had 3 startup stadium finalists. So the startup stadium at Bio International is the global pitch competition. So this is where early stage companies have the opportunity to pitch on the global stage. And so we had 3 of our Phoenix companies among the 47 finalists. And my understanding is that there were more than 800 applications. And so it was wonderful to see 3 of our companies be on that stage. There were 5 live presentations, really elevating the visibility of what's happening in Phoenix, with more than 1.5 million impressions out to the attendees. And to give you a sense of the Phoenix delegation, with the 42 attendees with us, so these are the organizations that had attended with us. So you can see there's a wide array and number of companies that attended with us. And they are really the champions. We love to have them with us because they can tell the story about how it is to do business in Phoenix. So it's not just Chris and I and the others from Phoenix telling the story, but it's really our companies that can really tell how it is to do business here in Phoenix. And they do it well and enthusiastically. And to give you a sense of what our Phoenix Pavilion and delegation look like, so this is just prior to the opening of the exhibit hall. So with Nathan Wright, Zandon Keating, Chris, of course, myself, and Martin Perez from the city's CED staff. And then afterwards, here it is. It's like all energy on that trade show floor. Just to give you another sense of what our pavilion looks like, this is some of us that attended the Taiwan held a reception. They always have a very large delegation that attends the trade show. And after meeting one of the companies that we met with at Bio. And then also on Monday, our partners with GPAC, SRP, APS, the ACA, they hosted a reception for the delegation, and then also Councilwoman Pastor had joined us, and so was talking to the delegation and talking about the vision for what's happening in Phoenix in the bio space. And I always like to end that slide with that, imagine your life. So here in Phoenix, right? And also, one of the things we like to do is ensure that there's a lot of engagement within our pavilion. And so we hosted a Phoenix Rapid Fire fireside chat. And so on the Tuesday evening of the trade show, we hosted this rapid fire fireside chat where we had Tom Osha with the Global Institute of Innovation Districts and Wexford Science and Technology. He facilitated great conversations with 17 of our bioscience leaders. So they had 4 minutes to be able to share the updates and cool things that are happening with their companies with 200 attendees that had attended that reception. And we wanted to also recognize, we were fortunate to have Govig and Associates. They were our reception sponsor for that evening. And then also Visit Phoenix was generous to provide us with a giveaway that we could have people drop their cards in, and so that for the chance to enter to win to the Phoenix Weekend Getaway for 2. And so one of the winners for that is actually going to be visiting Phoenix in the spring, and they've been looking at actually locating here in Phoenix. So we're really excited to host them here in the spring. And as I said, Startup Stadium, we had 3 of our finalists. And the City of Phoenix, over the past 5 years, we have been a sponsor of this global pitch competition to really demonstrate Phoenix's commitment to supporting the early stage bio companies and their founders. And this year, the stage received really prime placement. It was between the registration, so after you went to registration and picked up your badge and you're going to the exhibit hall, you could see the Startup Stadium stage right here, and you can see the City of Phoenix prominently displayed there. And we were in great company as co-sponsors with Aventor. It's one of the largest biopharmaceutical suppliers in the country, along with the National Science Taiwan Council. So we really were excited to have that co-sponsorship on this global stage. And our three companies, they represented different types of technologies, and it was really exciting to see the breadth of the technologies that are being developed through them pitching at the trade show at the Startup Stadium. And actually, it was really great because it's not, the point isn't really to win the competition, but it's really to elevate the visibility of the technologies that they're developing and being able to engage with the investors and strategic partners that they can develop there. And even amongst themselves, one of the startup companies actually became a customer of one of our other Startup Stadium finalists. So it's great to have that networking and connections within the group. And another cornerstone of the healthcare, bio and healthcare strategic initiative is our membership with the Arizona Bioindustry Association, or AZ Bio. And so you can see that they're celebrating, as Chris had said, we are starting with the Phoenix Bioscience Corps in the early 2000s, and Flynn Foundation with the Bioscience Roadmap, and then AZ Bio, so the 20 years impact. This is really when everybody was really coming together to really start this focus on biosciences. And so we're proud to be members of the AZ Bio organization, and that provides us the opportunity to really network with the industry and really be able to promote how we as the City of Phoenix support the growth of the industry. And this is our full-page ad that is coming out in the Arizona Business Magazine, and that is part of a 56-page supplement that happens in September and October. So this is a 56-page that's focused on the biosciences happening in Arizona. And this also coincides with the same month as Arizona Bioscience Week. And so that happens the week of September 25th. So I would encourage all of you to be able to, if you're able to attend some of the events. There's an event every day that week that's happening to really highlight and provide opportunities to showcase what's happening here in Arizona. And of course, we are showcasing what's happening here in Phoenix. And actually, all of the events that are happening that week are happening in Phoenix that are around Arizona Bioscience Week. So. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Christine Mackey. Thank you.
Thanks, Claudia. Chairman, members of the subcommittee, as we look at implementing our strategy, of course, funding is key. What our proposal is as it has been in other years, is $95,000 to participate in the Bio International Trade Show again for 2024, which I believe in 24 it takes place in San Diego, allowing us to have another large pavilion, another large delegation, and make international connections in one location. And then again, fund our membership to AZ Bio for $15,000 for a total of $110,000. It is important to note we do not need additional funding for this, the implementation of our initiative for a 6th year. It comes from our Biosciences Fund, which is funded by the rent off of the Phoenix Bioscience Corps that our university and other partners pay to the City of Phoenix. Staff does recommend the Economic Development and Housing Subcommittee move to the full City Council approval for the 23-24 Bioscience and Healthcare Strategic Initiative, including all the things that we talked about today, as well as the recommendation to have the ability to accept funds from our outside partners. What I mean by that is a lot of our delegation, whether it's GPAC or the Arizona Commerce Authority or our utility partners or our hospitals will often offer to fund some of the components of our pavilion and our attendance at the biostrategic initiative, so allowing us to accept the funds from them as well. But this would be an amount output from the city of not greater than $110,000. And with that, Chairman, we are happy to take any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. We really appreciate it. At this point, I'll open the floor to any questions or comments. Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Move to approve. I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, well, the last item on the agenda is a call to the public. Do we have any registered speakers?
Mr. Chair, we have no request to speak.
No registered speakers? I'm sorry, okay. All right, then, thank you very much for this meeting. The meeting is adjourned.